What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. Captain Cody Davis here with you guys again, as always, for another one. I appreciate you guys clicking on the video this afternoon or this morning, whenever it is you might be watching this. But I know for damn sure it is this afternoon while I'm filming this because I set the camera up to shoot this and I said, you know what, let me go out, plug my boat in, and fill the water trough up for the animals. Because once I'm done with this video, we're heading down to my in-laws to eat twice my body weight in barbecued ribs. So I'm super excited for that. And just from walking out there and doing that quick chore, I am a dripping mess with sweat. I don't know, it's like 97 right now, and I think the real feel is like 104. It's scary outside. So I'm glad to be here in the AC talking to this camera. But real quick, I wanted to shoot this video because I've been getting a lot of questions from customers on the boat and just a lot of people, like I said, on social media and things, um, reaching out to me with like opinions on throwing a frog. And it varies all over, right? Like what kind of line, or what pound test I'm fishing, gear ratio of a reel, rod, when to throw it, when not, what frog I'm throwing. And mainly with customers on the boat lately, like basically what it is it's like, do you guys want to throw a frog? And it's either a quick yes. A lot of people love it, but there's a lot of people that say, yeah, I'll do it. But they're like, man, I really don't. I don't know. I don't have the success where I see other people online having with the frog. And a big thing I've come to realize is I think a lot of people don't truly understand what it is you're trying to do with a popping style frog down here in South Florida specifically. Frog fishing varies all throughout the country, kind of what you throw it in, when you throw it, where you throw it. There's all different variations of frogging, but down here on Lake Okeechobee specifically, we'll talk about, and I know it varies around like the Glades, or kind of holds true what I'm going to talk about in the Glades, Lake Kissimmee, the Kissimmee chain, it's things like that, different fisheries down here in South Florida. There's different things you're trying to do with this, and I'm sure that this holds true for different fisheries, all throughout the country. That I don't know. I mean, I think there's little different variations of frog fishing throughout the rest of the country, but these little tips and ideas I'm going to give you, I'm sure, actually, I know for a fact will hold true in those areas. So I'm just going to run through it real quick. This is kind of a different style of video. Maybe some things that a lot of you watching this maybe haven't thought of or don't think of that way. Because again, I talk to you guys about this all the time. 90% of this game is mental. And if you have like a better understanding as to what the fish are doing or why you're doing a certain thing at a certain time, I feel like if you understand it better, you have more confidence in it and you're going to catch some more fish. So what I've got here, this is one of my frog setups. This is a 7.4 slackliner by Senko Sticks. Awesome all around, kind of just heavy cover rod. So I've been playing with this thing a lot. It's a 7.4, great popping frog rod, great rod for buzzing a bait like a Big Easy. Just a bunch of different techniques that we've been using here on Lake Okeechobee. But the one we're going to talk about today is the popping style frog. So just for those of you that are new here, this is the frog that I throw 95% of the time anymore. This is the Gambler popping frog, and I like it in the color black, which we're going to get into here. But all different colors work. It's really what you have confidence in, but I'll explain why I throw a black one. So first and foremost, here's the thing. Like one of the biggest questions I get is why a popping frog out here on Okeechobee, and why not the traditional pointed nose frog? I don't know. I do know, but I don't know. The things I'm going to talk about, realistically, you should be able to have very great success with a traditional pointed nose like the bronze eye spro, frog, or any of the different walking frogs that we have out on the market anymore. You should really be able to have the success with them as you do a popping style frog, but you just don't. I mean, I'm not going to tell you if you come out here on Lake Okeechobee that you're not going to catch any on a traditional frog. That's not what I'm saying. But you are going to get a lot more bites, and you're going to have a lot bigger bites, per average, throwing this style frog. And what it comes down to which we're going to get into, is what you're really trying to do with this frog. So if you're talking about a lake like Lake Gunnersville, we'll just throw that one out there. That lake is one of the best lakes in the country right now, and it's known for its frog fishing. I believe it's in the fall, fishing those big matted, well, main lake mats of hydrilla and things like that. A very similar scenario is what you saw Jordan Lee do on Lake Toho, I believe it was last year, catching all those giant fish in that big hydrilla mat, fishing I believe that was the Berkeley Swamp Lord traditional walking frog or pointed nose frog. I sound like an idiot when I say that, but that's what it is. And in that situation, a pointed nose frog is what you want. You're almost just wanting that thing to be subtle, kind of come through the mat, not bogged down with any of that cheese or that slop on top. Just naturally but subtle, make its way across that mat, and those fish are coming up through that simply because I honestly think they don't know what it is. They just think it might be a actual frog, or there's just movement up on top of the mat. And there's not a better bait than that frog because you could stop it. It's going to float in place. You can move it. You can kind of walk it in place, make it make some commotions, maybe clear a little bit of scum off the top, and those fish are coming up and grabbing it. Whereas if you throw a popping frog in there with this cupped mouth, okay, it's going to pick up debris and junk, and it's going to end up coming over the frog and getting on these hooks, and you're going to foul up a lot, and you're going to be wasting casts. So for that style of fishing, obviously the traditional style frog is what you want. But out here on Okeechobee, sadly enough, we don't really have mats anymore. We just don't. And even when we do, and when we did, a lot of these times where these fish are holding in these mats, they're almost holding under them, and the mats are almost a little bit too thick to frog correctly. And our fish are so sensitive to colder weather that a lot of times when the fish were holding in the mats, it was very hard to get them to come up and actually, crush a frog on top of it, which is why you saw everyone with the big rods flipping the big weights, 1.5 ounce into these mats and pulling these fish out, because our fish get really lethargic in the wintertime. And that's a lot of times when they're holding into that thick cover. So we don't really have a lot of those mats. When we're frog fishing on Okeechobee, we're more or less open water frog fishing, throwing to edges, throwing to holes, and you're not really having to bring the frog through things. Now you will like Kissimmee grass, different emergent grasses like cattails, through round reed clumps, through dollar pads, but you're more or less targeting holes or edges of that grass. And with that, when you're throwing the frog, having something that causes commotion to call fish from far away if you can, but also create a commotion on top that in essence almost pisses the fish off depending on what's going on, is really what gets the bite. So for example, spawn time. If you have a warming trend, you're up there on the moon when these fish are getting on the bed, probably one of the best things to do is throw a gambler burner worm or a fat ace or something to isolated cover and dead stick it around where you think these fish might be bedding, which works awesome. There's tons of giant fish caught that way. But I think sometimes a lot of these really big fish are very educated to that. And a lot of times you'll end up catching the male and maybe won't get that female to eat, just getting a good look at that worm. Maybe she sees your line, your leader. And at the end of the day, a 6-inch ace laying on a bed is not that big of a threat. It might annoy them. They don't really want it on the bed, but it's not really doing too much. Whereas if you throw something like this above their bed and it's popping, it's commotion, it's a fairly good sized bait. It's got a big profile, which we'll get into here in a second. And you're popping it and it's pushing all that water. Those big fish do not want this thing anywhere around their bed. All right. And here's the deal, especially in spawn time and really throughout the rest of the year, and I try to preach this to my customers, you don't want them, and I don't think they do. These bass do not think this is a frog. A frog doesn't have shiny legs. A frog doesn't make this big commotion. Our fish think that this is some sort of a panfish. Now we're down here in South Florida, so what's a panfish? It could be anything: a Mayan cichlid, a tilapia, a shellcracker, a bluegill, a small crappie or speck. Things that we don't even know are in the water, a warmouth, any kind of panfish. That is what this imitates so well. The profile of this bait has that panfish kind of hand-sized profile in the water. It's causing commotion, and that is what those panfish do. They feed on those bass eggs. So these bass do not want them anywhere around. On top of that, it's a top water bait, which means it's floating, obviously, which means those big educated fish can't get a good look at the bait. They can't study it, although they try. You'll see the big boils come up into the bait. But more times than not, they're going to eat this thing if the water temperature is right and they're fairly active. So you have tons of things going for you. It's a big profile bait. It's hidden for the most part from these big educated fish. They can't get a good look at it, and it pisses them off. Same thing goes for right now. We just got done with spring. All right. So again, I just told you that they kind of think this might be a dead or a dying or a feeding brim around their bed and their eggs. Well, as my buddy Chris always says, now they get to get revenge on those bluegill that were pestering them, annoying the hell out of them while these bass were trying to spawn. Now the brim are coming in to spawn, and these big fish that are up tight, up shallow, are looking for those bluegill to feed. Hence why we throw this guy around brim beds. All right, big openings in Kissimmee grass, even open water. If you see bluegill out in open water, there's nothing stopping you from throwing this frog. Okay, they eat it. They just flat out eat it if you have the confidence. And listen, I'm not going to get into all the different tiny nuances and little things you can do with the frog that definitely enhance you getting bit. But all you need to know is throw it. Like, work at it and throw it. But don't, everyone looks for the thickest, nastiest stuff to throw this in, when a lot of times we're fishing this in fairly open water. And a lot of people try to make it look like a frog when I try to do everything but that. I always say, like, one of the big reasons I throw a black frog is if you ever take a bluegill or a panfish and it's dying or not looking good, if you're ever trolling and you see a bluegill kind of on its side, whether a bird tried to get it or a bass inhaled it and couldn't swallow it and spit it out, that fish, that fish, being a bluegill or a panfish, is not usually lit up in color. It's dying, its lactic acid buildup is crazy, and they almost turn a black color, which is why I like throwing the black frog. On top of that, it's a very neutral color. When that fish is looking up, that is all it sees. It's casting a silhouette anyway because the sun's shining. So I don't think they could really tell exactly what color you're throwing anyway. It's going to look very dark, or at least it's going to look darker to them as it does to us because, again, the sun they're looking at the underside. Again, a black's a neutral color. They'll eat it in real clean water. They'll eat it in dirty water because they can see it better because of that silhouette. I also think there's a small chance that maybe that bass really doesn't know what it is. And it's just, the only way for it to find out is to eat it. There is a small, percentage of fish that I think just hit it because it's moving and they don't know what it is. So the black kind of highlights that as well. They don't get as good of a look at it. Another thing a lot of people don't think about, and it sounds kind of dumb, but I know for a fact I've caught fish that think this is what it is. We get these black red-winged blackbirds in the lake in the springtime. And when the lake gets real low, the water gets clean, and these birds kind of hop from cattail head to cattail head. They eat these small chizzywink but we call them chizzywink, these little bugs off the reeds. And I know for a fact that these big bass come out of the water and eat them. I've seen it. I've had them cough up the feathers in my live well, and that looks just like a small bird that just landed in the water for a second. That's the other thing. Another kind of a misconception with this frog is a lot of people are like, man, I really like this popping frog because it walks a certain way. And that's any brand you can imagine. People talk about this one or that one. Like, it walks very easily. Well, that's kind of a big misconception on this lake. Not that you won't get bit, but a lot of times you don't really necessarily walk this frog at all. I could tell you from experience, I don't walk it whatsoever. It's all about that pop R times 5 kind of pop you get out of the frog, whichever one you choose to use. There's a bunch of good ones out there, but you want that good loop, like that kick of water. And I think there's a few reasons for that. It's going to, obviously the bass hear it, right? So that it could call fish from a small distance away, if depending on how active they are, how far they'll come to get the bait. So you're going to get that calling. 2, that action is just, it's historically very good, right? There's nothing one of the old school pop R lures, hula popper style baits. They caught tons of giant fish, so it pisses them off. Two, I think sometimes they think it might be that maybe that small bait fish or that cichlid, tilapia, bluegill, whatever they think the frog is maybe feeding on something. It's kind of going forward and causing that disturbance on the water. But also another thing a lot of people don't think about is every time you pop it, it creates those ripples, which breaks up the silhouette from this bait, which means the big fish can't, again, get as good of a look at it. I think a lot of people overlook that whole reason why big bass eat top water. It's not necessarily because they want to feed on top. It's just as opposed to that dragging a red ribbon tail worm or a chatterbait coming by their face where they can kind of follow it, track it, and study it. This is half out of the water, half in, and they can't study it. So if they're going to eat it, it's a 50-50 shot. They'll eat this thing. Another thing, going back to this thing looking like a brim, a lot of people work their frogs too fast a lot of times. There are days where they want it going quick, but especially like during a spawning time, maybe the fish are a little bit more lethargic, or maybe they're pressured fish. Popping the frog, giving it a good bite, letting it settle is a big deal. And a lot of people think maybe it's for the fish to get to the frog. I personally don't think it has anything to do with that. If you take an injured or dying bluegill, especially a decent sized one, and you ever watch them in a fish tank or at a Bass Pro or online or whatever it is, you can look up all types of different footage of it. A bluegill or a panfish's main defense system is its dorsal fins. Its anal fin has a big sharp edge on it. Also, its pec fins. They're very spiny fish, and what they do is in defense, if they have a fish chasing them, those bluegill, if they get cornered, will put all of those fins out. All right, they'll spread them out, and that's exposing those fins so that if a fish inhales them, they get poked and let go. But also another reason is to make themselves appear larger, a bigger profile. So maybe that 4-pounder, that 5-pound bass can't quite swallow them and they turn away. It's like a defense sort of deal. Similar to like something like a porcupine. Well, every time you stop, every time you pop this bait, these tassels, they go in together, but as you let that bait settle, all these legs spread out. And I think that those fish really think that that's like a bluegill trying to defend itself, give itself a bigger profile, and those really giant ones just say nope and come up and crush this thing. So that's when I throw this frog. And that's why I think a lot of times when people come down here in the wintertime and they want to try and throw a frog, if that water temp is below 64, 65, I really tell people, like, man, you're almost wasting your time. You cannot say you won't catch any, but it's just not the deal. That 70-degree mark seems to be the magic number. And I think it's because those fish are lethargic and they just, when it comes to a brim or a panfish style bait, that is a big ordeal for that fish to not only attack, crush, eat, hold on to, and then digest. It's a lot when those fish really aren't in that gorging, that feeding mode. That's why you catch a lot more fish on that Senko style bait, smaller style baits, scaling down in the wintertime, because that fish's metabolism they're not raring to go like they are right now in the heat where they want a bigger meal. Again, you still can catch them, but that's where working that frog extremely slow, throwing it to beds, what have you, and it takes a lot of patience to do so. But you can piss off some big fish with it. So the one that I use, this is the Gambler Popping Frog. They make it in a multitude of different colors. My hookup ratio is great. The Flashaboo in the legs was an old school trick we used to do with the Spros back in the day. No secret now because they come with it. So that's why I choose to use it. This thing is ready to fish out of the box. Again, your hookup ratio is great. And here's another quick tip I'll give you guys. The reason I throw the black one is because the black poppin' frog also has a different texture. It's made out of a different material than from, I got one right here. So this is kind of like a purple flash one that's been eaten alive. But with the paint, it's got that slick clear coat on there, which you have trouble with the frog wanting to skip out of the water because it's so slick. Where this is a little more coarse, a little heavier, and this frog stays in the water and pops very, very well. So just think about all that stuff when you're throwing a popping frog out here. You're not really trying to imitate a frog at all. trying to imitate some kind of a panfish, and just throw it when you're around either a fish that are targeting bluegill, okay, or throw it around if you want to throw it for spawners, you can. Just really slow it down. And again, I throw mine on 65-pound braid, big hook sets. These are big fish. I don't want it to break. So I fish 65-pound braid. This is a 7.4 heavy, essentially. That's what it is. Fast action rod. It's a slack liner by Senko Sticks. He makes a ton of different frog rods depending on what you want to use, what kind of application, what you're looking for to specifically throw a frog on your body of water. Makes them from a 7.2 to a 7.6. The 7.3 is one of my favorites, probably very versatile for all the different type of frogging applications you could run into. But the one right now I'm throwing right now is a 7.4 slack liner, helping me with really long casts and moving these fish from a long ways away because we're dealing with very clear water conditions and very shallow conditions on Okeechobee. So getting that bait away from the boat has definitely helped. So hopefully you guys picked up some tips. Let me know if you guys want to get out on Okeechobee and try to do some frog fishing yourself. The frog bite has been very good, even in the heat right now. And we can get out there and do so. Other than that, I think I'm going to go try and catch a tarpon tomorrow. I've been on the lake every day. So I might go try to catch a tarpon tomorrow and film that for you guys. So let me know if you guys want to check any of that out. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Appreciate you guys watching, and tight lines, and stay cool out there.